The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, the Bombers have won 6 of their last 8. I'm sure we've got a nice regulation match this week. Let's have a look who we're playing. Oh God!
Everybody panic!
Well, Essendon are playing the Brisbane Lions on Thursday night at the Gabba in what appears to be a bit of a Mission Impossible type match for Essendon, a little bit like the match against the Western Bulldogs the other week. Is there any case we can make for Essendon winning this match? Is there anything we can point to? Well, probably not. We'd probably be clutching at straws, but we'll have a little bit of a look at the match and see if there can be some case for the Bombers this week. If you like this channel, hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps the YouTube algorithm. It will ensure you never miss a video. It only takes a second to do so, and it doesn't cost any money at all. So what are you waiting for? I'd love it if you could do that right now. Well, last time we did play the Brisbane Lions was in the last home and away round last year, and it wasn't a bad performance. We lost by 20 points, 87 to 67. We were never really going to win, but there was a bit of a hint in the last quarter that we were making a little bit of a comeback, but it sort of came to nothing. Brisbane kicked pretty inaccurately, kicked 11 goals, 21. But it's worth noting that was a dead rubber for us last year. We were playing for absolutely nothing, and Brisbane was playing for a home final. And we did actually put a pretty good effort in. I remember that last home and away round, North Melbourne and West Coast were losing by 100 points, and there was some suggestion that we were going to get blown away. But we did actually turn up and put some pride into the performance. That was Dyson Heppell's last game. I think he had about 31 possessions and was one of the best players on the ground. So we lost by 20 points, and all things considered, it wasn't a bad performance. We're about a 35-point underdog in this match. It is worth noting, just taking a glass half full approach, that Melbourne, who has improved drastically over the last month, was also a 35-point underdog against the Brisbane Lions, and they beat them up there. And Brisbane, despite hitting some form last week against Hawthorn, has struggled a little bit, especially at the Gabba. They've lost 2 matches at the Gabba already to Collingwood and Melbourne. They only snuck home against the West Coast Eagles, and they drew down in Tasmania against North Melbourne. So they're not in crash hot form, despite their excellent performance against Hawthorn at the MCG on the weekend. But it's difficult to make a case for the Bombers. We're going to have a couple of outs. We're going to have Reid out with hamstring tightness. We're not quite sure how serious that is. Langford will be out for probably a month or so. There's also a suggestion Guelphy might be out. We're not quite sure about that, but there's a bit of a suggestion he was injured or carrying something towards the end of the game. So the potential ins for this match are quite confusing because the VFL schedule is really not compatible with the AFL schedule at all. We had a 5-day break between the VFL game and this Thursday night game. So we took Archer Day Wicks out of the side, so it appears that Archer Day Wicks will be playing on Thursday night. So he probably comes in for Langford, not in a direct replacement kind of way, position for position, but Langford's obviously out with the quad injury, so Archer Day Wicks comes in. The question is, who comes in for Reid? And I don't think it's going to be a like-for-like replacement because we simply don't have any talls who can come in for Reid. Just looking at Brisbane's forward line, they do have a lot of small players down there. Charlie Cameron, Jared Berry, Cam Rayner, Calamarchi. Their 2 talls are Logan Morris, who's 191 centimetres, and of course Eric Hipwood. So we'll probably have to make do with Ben McKay and Laverty taking Hipwood and Morris, with Redmond, I guess, helping out where he can, because there's not really anyone else who can come in. So that begs the question, who sort of comes in for Reid as a replacement, given that Reid won't be playing, I'm sure, with hamstring tightness, they're not going to risk him. And you just look at the VFL team that played, and does Parish come into the side? We go in with a smaller side. I don't think Parish comes in. I think they'll give him another game in the reserves, just because I don't think they'll play him off the 5-day break. They did manage him in the last quarter, so that might be some indication he could come in. But just with the 5-day break, I don't think they'll do it. Saad El Houli would have been an obvious in for the side, but he did his hammy on the weekend as well. So there's just no obvious replacements in there. Some of the players, obviously, in the VFL aren't ready. Zac Johnson, perhaps for his first game. I keep on saying that every week. It's going to happen one of these days. But I don't know if that's quite ready yet this weekend. I suspect they're probably going to bring Shiel in and make him the sub. He played okay in the VFL, and I think just because of his age, I think him coming in and making him the sub is probably a sensible option for just an experienced player. So my predictions would be Shield to come in, Archer-Day-Wicks to come in, and Reid and Langford out of the side. There's been some talk, and wouldn't this be amazing, that given that we have the mid-season draft on Wednesday, the day before, we could theoretically pick a player. We're going to pick 2 defenders, we think. That seems to be the rumour. We're going to pick 2 defenders for our 4 picks. There's a bit of a rumour that whoever we pick could potentially line up the very next day. Now, I think that's highly unlikely. I reckon there's about a 5% chance of that happening, but it could happen. It could happen in theory. We could pick, McCartan or someone like that if we're lucky enough, if he falls through to us, and he could play on the Thursday. I just don't think, having not trained with the teammates or anything, I think that'd be unlikely to happen. But wouldn't it be an amazing story if someone was selected on the Wednesday night in the preseason draft, and the mid-season draft, which is at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday night, and then 24 hours later is on a plane to Brisbane flying up to play for the Bombers? I don't think that'll happen. If Guelphy is out of the side injured, then Sartis is probably the likely third change to come into the side. He could play off the 5-day break. He's still young. That's not an issue for him. He had the 32 possessions, and it might be an opportunity for him to prove himself against the Premiers. So we'll see how that goes. So how do we stop the Brisbane team? Well, this was their team as they lined up on the weekend. They didn't suffer any injury, so I imagine they will probably have a similar lineup against us. And they're just so dynamic, and they're such good at their ball movement as well. And look at that forward line as well. They've got Cameron and Calamachi, Cam Rayner. They've just got, small forward goal kickers. They're able to move the ball quickly. McCluggage, Dunkley, Neil are all A-grade midfielders. And then you've got the 2 Ashcrofts as well. They've just got a really dynamic side. And as they showed on the weekend against Hawthorn, after a couple of poor games, they're kind of the type of team that is capable of turning it on. And you just hope that they might have a little bit of an off day against us. Maybe their motivation against Essendon is probably going to be slightly different against Hawthorn. We'll see, but it's going to be a tough one for the Bombers. So just looking at some of the stats, look, it's worth noting that Brisbane only has a percentage of 113. They're not absolutely dominant this year. You just do get that feeling, however, that they're sort of capable of turning it on. If you look at the stats here, the main difference is really inside 50s there. They average about 8 more inside 50s per game. Most of the other stats, there's not a huge difference there. The big difference, I feel, at least in watching Brisbane play, is their dynamic ball movement, and that is in stark contrast to us. We are one of the slowest teams in the competition. We have a negative differential in terms of metres gained, despite the fact that we are a heavy possession team. And the way they move the ball is just so quick and dynamic, and it's going to be very, very difficult to stop them. So, on the surface level, there's actually not a great deal between the teams on the pure numbers, but there's a big gulf in talent and skill in terms of the way they move the ball. In terms of some of the differential numbers, inside 50 differential, Brisbane are +6 per game, Essendon are -5.7. Disposal differential, Essendon are +24.3. Brisbane also have a positive disposal difference, +19.5. Metres gained, and I brought this up in the previous video against Richmond. Essendon is -250 metres gained in terms of differential per match compared to the opposition. Brisbane are +113. Now remember, that's a -250 for Essendon, despite the fact that we have more possessions than anyone else in the competition, bar one team. So that tells you a little bit about how we play. Contested possession difference, Brisbane are +4.2, Essendon are +3.4. Uncontested possession differential is pretty much the same. Essendon are +17.2, Brisbane are +15.8. These teams do like to possess the ball. Stoppage clearance differential, Brisbane and Essendon are 2 of the best teams in the competition. Brisbane are +4.1 per game, Essendon are +3.0. Tackles inside 50. I brought this up because it's a little bit of a sore point for the Bombers this year. Brisbane are +3.5, second in the competition. We are -1.5, 12th, but we're up from last. We had 15 tackles inside 50 against Richmond last week, which was a season high for the Bombers and one of the best performances in the competition by a single team this year. So that lifted us from last up to 12th. So that was a pretty good accolade there for Essendon to improve in that particular area. Scores from turnover differential, Brisbane are plus 1.6. Essendon are negative 9.1. This to me comes down to the way we move the ball. Scoring from turnover is the biggest score source in the competition. If you can't score from turnover, you can't win. Not surprisingly, Collingwood lead that number. The fact that we are negative 9.1, that is one area, if you start moving the ball quicker, that would assist us in scoring from turnover greatly. So how does this game pan out? Well, it's difficult to make a case for Essendon, obviously. Are we some sort of chance? Well, probably not, but then again, I did see the Mission Impossible movie on the weekend, and Tom Cruise dived into a submarine in the middle of the Arctic Ocean while suffering the bends, downloaded a computer code from the submarine whilst it was collapsing around him, and managed to escape and then save the world. So look, you never know. It is possible. Look, there are two teams out there. As I stated earlier, Melbourne was a 35-point underdog against Brisbane and won. So you just never know. But realistically, it's probably going to be beyond us. Brisbane are just too good. They're at home. They had a big win against Hawthorn. They're chock full of confidence. My prediction in this match is Brisbane to win by 36 points. So let me know what you guys think. Who do you think is going to come into the side this week? What do you think will be the outcome of the match? I think the selection this week is fascinating. There are no obvious sort of like-for-like ins in terms of a like-for-like in for Langford and a like-for-like in for Reid. There are obvious players that are capable of coming into the side, but how the side is structured is going to be fascinating. Brad Scott actually did say, and I heard his press conference after the game, that they might need to rejig the team a little bit in terms of playing players in different positions. So that's really interesting. Who's going to play in what position? Will we see some players play in the back line that don't normally play there? He doesn't like to throw the team around too much, Brad. So it's going to be interesting to see who goes down there. Angus Clark was kind of recruited as a rebounding defender in the mould of a Mason Redman. And he's quite tall. He's 189 centimetres. Obviously kicked the 3 goals on the weekend. Could he play down back? He was picked on essentially on the wing, played a couple of games on the wing in the VFL before debuting in Dreamtime, and then played on the wing and went forward and kicked the 3 goals. But given that he has played a little bit in the back line and is kind of, in his junior career, is kind of experienced down there, it wouldn't surprise me if Angus Clark plays in the back line. Obviously, we need to shore up the back line a little bit with Reid missing, so that might be something. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Who would you bring into the side? What do you think the margin's going to be? Do any of you think we can win? I want to hear in the comments. Do any of you think Essendon can win this game? There are 2 teams playing. Look, you never know. You never know.
But right now, you're being delusional.
And just imagine it. Imagine if we did win. Just ponder that for a moment. We're 6-4. Imagine if we did win. Wouldn't that shake up the competition a little bit if we were 6-4 and we beat the reigning premiers to go 7-4? Fanciful thinking maybe, but look, you never know. You never know. There's 2 teams out there. One of them's got to win. Maybe it could be us. I doubt it, but we'll see how it goes. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Have a great day, everybody. And as always, go Bombers.